Hi, welcome to this video. This is Mr. Chow. Today's video we will be learning how to do the PSLE composition writing. So this will be a live lesson, follow along lesson. So let's get started. So before we begin, okay, all students are welcome to join in. This is a follow along lesson, right? So do prepare some writing materials, some foolscap paper, exercise book, pen, pencil, whatever works for you. All right. And then I'm going to be teaching composition writing. Okay. So I think there will be a total of 3 to 4 working exercises, and students will be given 10 minutes of working time. And again, there will be an on-screen timer so the students can actually practice their writing as they follow along this lesson. Of course, I'll be going through the answers and hopefully be coming up with some explanations to help students understand more about what the exercise is about and how to do well. All right, and I will end the lesson with some bonus tips. Okay, so let's get started. The composition writing exercise is in paper 1, and instead of 40 marks for the old syllabus, is now 36 marks. All right, the other 14 marks actually comes from situational writing, and that is for the upon 50 in total, right? So content, students will score 80 marks, and language, students will score 80 marks as well. So content means your story, right? The storytelling, we brainstorm for ideas. How good are those ideas? Is it coherent? Okay, it's about your skills when you tell the stories. And as for language, it's about of course, grammar, spelling, comma, your punctuation, sentence structures, right? And your word choice, okay? And all that will count towards your language marks, all right? Word choice doesn't mean you just choose all the bombastic words and throw them into your composition and expect to do well. All right, you need to choose the right words and use them at the right time, okay? So the total for paper 1 is 50 marks instead of the old marks, right? The 55 marks. And the recommended time for reading and planning, reading means read the question, is 5 to 10 minutes and 30 to 40 minutes actual writing time. Now paper 1 is 1 hour 10 minutes, right? So you want to leave at least like 20 or maximum 25 minutes on the situational writing. Quickly finish that off, then come back to work on the composition. All right. And I notice a lot of students don't like to invest time in the reading and planning, right? We can avoid a lot of problems down the road if you just spend 5-10 minutes to do some quick and simple planning, right? We will look at those problems later. Okay, so what's step 1? So what do we do? The step 1 is not to start writing first. Please read the question and plan accordingly. Okay, you want to be able to identify the topic, right? So here's an example. Write a composition of at least 150 words about trying a new sport. So, of course, keyword here is sport, right? And everybody knows what a sport is. But there's an adjective, right? New sport. So if your entire story, you are talking about a sport that you play with your family all the time, and you talk about a hobby, right, that you're very familiar with, then you may be off topic, okay? So we don't want to be off topic. We want to be on topic so that you're not penalized. Now in the question, you are given 3 pictures. Now the 3 pictures are designed to be simplistic intentionally, all right? This is done so that students can just draw some inspiration from the pictures and exercise their own creativity, right? So instead of just describing what is in the picture, they need to activate their imagination and fill in the details themselves, right? Instead of just having the pictures tell the whole story, all right? So you want to base your composition on 1 or more of the pictures. Now 1 or more simply means that when you write, you need to refer directly to the picture to make it very clear to the examiner or the marker and say that, hey, I have base my composition on at least one, right? For example, if you see a picture of a clock, then it's best to just have the word clock in your composition, right? That's obvious, right? But when students write, they tend to forget, right, that they need to refer to one of the pictures. And there's no point that you argue, say, yeah, I write about, no, there's the assumption that it takes time, blah, 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 but you don't see the word clock, okay? And you might get penalized just because you did not refer to one of the pictures directly, okay? Now, in addition, you are given 2 to 3 optional prompts. A prompt is a question, right? So we'll take a look at an example of this later. So what I want to say here is that you want to use what the questions have given to you. Okay, they are not meant to restrict you. They are meant to inspire you, right? So that you can brainstorm, exercise your creativity, and come up with your masterpiece. All right. So a lot of students you don't have to be proud and say that I have my own original story, so and therefore I don't have to refer to the question. I think you're making a mistake, right? Because your story may be out of point. As for the students who struggle with coming up with the story, struggle with coming up with ideas, then all the more you should use the information and the prompts that are given to you, right? The pictures and the prompts. Now, so what do we do with the given information, right? We want to use the prompts to help with the planning, right? We want to use the images to help brainstorm for ideas, at least one, so you don't have to use all 3, okay? The key here is to remain flexible, but always stay on topic, right? So what's the topic again? New spot, okay? That should be always at the top of your head. So here's an example, right? First picture, right? We have a badminton racket with a shuttlecock. So you know what the sport is. Badminton, very popular among students. Second picture, you have a girl running beside a boy, and they have very happy expression on their faces, and they seem to be wearing a PT kit, right? So maybe they are on their way to join a new sport, a new CCA, right? And then the third picture, we have an adult who looks like a coach or the instructor, and he's teaching the young boy in the picture tennis, okay? Now, in these 3 pictures, I have 2 sports, badminton and tennis, right? So I can choose either one. Now, but what if I want to write about soccer, right? And soccer is not in the picture. Then the only choice I have is to try to reference the picture in the middle, right? So maybe you're going to try a new CCA, try a new sport, which is soccer or futsal, right? With my best friend, right? And then, it's one cheerful morning, afternoon, one cheerful morning, right? Or one cheerful afternoon, right? And then after school, okay? And you are headed to the soccer field with your best friend. So this is what I mean by remaining flexible, okay, but at the same time stay on topic, and I'm still referencing one of the pictures, all right? But if you just choose a sport like badminton, or you mention learning tennis, all right, then your job is done, okay? So you at least reference one of the picture. Now consider the following points when you plan your composition, right? So what was the new sport? Okay, so in our example, we are going to choose tennis, right? Do you encounter any challenges? Now, as with learning anything new, there are bound to be challenges, right? So even without these prompts, you should be thinking, right, in the planning phase, like what kind of challenges can I write about, okay? So maybe I'm just not very good at sport. I'm very clumsy. That's a challenge, right? If I'm learning volleyball and I can't jump very high, okay, that's a challenge, okay? And you're learning a very difficult skill, that's a challenge, okay? So write about all these challenges, right? And that will give you a lot of content for your composition. And the third prompt, would you recommend the new sport to someone else? Why and why not? All right, would you recommend the new sport to someone else? Why and why not? Now, for me, this particular question, I will maybe decide to leave it to the conclusion, because after trying out the new sport, then you can decide whether you want to recommend this to someone else or not, right? And then you give your reasons. Now, again, I would like to emphasize these are optional prompts, right? So if you just take the first two prompts and you feel that you have enough content, you have already written 300 words or more, right? Then you can safely ignore the last prompt, right? But if you have written just 200, 250 and you have time and you want to add more content, then maybe it's a good idea to consider answering the last prompt, and that will give you another 30 to 50 words, and you will make your conclusion a lot stronger, right, for your composition. So you may use the points, right, in any order, okay, and include other relevant points as well. So in this particular case, I think I'll just stick to the same order, and I will not change, right, because I think it makes sense. You have to mention the new spot first, you can write about the challenges, and then finally you conclude by saying, right, after tackling the challenges, well, maybe it's not such a fun spot that I don't recommend for these reasons, right? And that's a good conclusion, okay? So the composition planning helps to prevent writer's block, right? This I already mentioned in the beginning of the video, right? So what is writer's block? Writer's block is when you have your ideas flowing halfway, writing halfway, and then suddenly the ideas stop. Okay, I think most people experience this, right, at some point. If you don't plan, and can you imagine the amount of time that you spend, trying to brainstorm for ideas every 2 or 3 sentences? That is going to be really time consuming. And what if you don't know how to proceed? Okay, and you find that, oh, maybe I want to go in a new different direction. Okay, then the first part of the composition is wasted. Okay, you have to cancel everything. All right, you don't have the luxury of time. So again, do consider investing that 5-10 minutes to plan for the composition to prevent your writer's block. So the plan gives you an outline, which makes the writing a lot easier. The outline, in bullet point, that is the structure, okay, of your composition. Now, your planning should include introduction, your characters, your climax, your ending. Now, if this approach is new to you, okay, I highly recommend that you practice writing so that you get a good sense of what to write for the introduction, what to write for the characters, what to write for the climax, and what to write for the ending. Hopefully, if you just follow the this video lesson to the end, right, you will know what to do, okay? Now, use bullet points to create a brief outline. So what do I mean? So sometimes I see students like over-invest in the planning, right? So they have a paper, right? And then they have ideas, you have ideas and then ideas, then you have arrows drawing here and there, flying all over the place, okay? This is a messy plan, okay? This is not what we want, all right? We just want the bullet points, right? Introduction, this is what we write, okay? Later, I'll give you the example, okay? And you can see how it works, all right? So don't over-invest the time. Okay, so let's get started and work on the question, right? So for the introduction, my planning, all right, first of all, I want to establish where, the venue. So for me, I've chosen the school. I'm having a conversation with Tom at the tennis court, right? So you might want to choose other venues, right? The school field, the auditorium in school, okay? The futsal court, whatever. Right? When it took place, one cheerful morning, that's easy to establish. Okay, and what sport, right? We are going to learn tennis. Okay, so we already reference at least one of the picture. Job is done, you're safe. Okay, so I only took a minute, right? And these are the essential, the bare minimum essentials for my introduction, and I'm done. All right, and I want to move on quickly to my characters. So who are the characters in my story, right? So of course, first is myself, right? So I am this, clumsy, short, person, okay, wearing thick glasses, all right? And I am bad. That's me, right? My character. I'm bad at sports, okay? And then my best friend, okay, who is Tom, is athletic, popular, tall, and muscular. So he is the complete polar opposite. So I do this intentionally to make my story more interesting. Okay, so and then there's Uncle Jerry, right? Because remember in the picture I see a tennis coach, all right, and Uncle Jerry is similar to Tom. He is athletic and also tall and muscular. And that's it. That's all the characters I need for my story. I don't want to overcomplicate the plot. All right. So the climax, right? So for those who can't remember, a climax is the highest point of your story, right? So you have your rising action, right? So this particular point, the highest point, the most interesting point, is called the climax. All right. So here's an example. Right, Tom learned quickly as expected, right? Of course, because he's athletic, he is popular, he's tall and muscular, he has all the sports genes, okay? But I did something clumsy, okay? So maybe the ball or the racket hits Uncle Jerry, right? Maybe I was trying to hit the ball, trying too hard, right? And the racket left my hand, okay? And flew towards, phew, 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 Uncle Jerry and hit him on his head, right? So the climax itself, what I want is, because it's the highest, most interesting point, okay, that there could be a lot of reactions, right? And your reactions will actually add to the energy level of the climax, right? Because rising action, highest level of energy. Okay, so later we will see how we use the words to describe these reactions so that the climax become more interesting. Now, by the time you go to the climax, okay, we are ready for the review. All right, review means whatever problem that we have, okay, we are going to review the solution. So over here, like whatever plot that you have planned, this is the time to review the plot. You don't want to give the plot away too early here, or worse, even in the introduction, okay, you already tell the reader what's going to happen, right? So then why should they read to the end of the story? Okay, so keep the reader in suspense and only review near the climax or later. Okay, so I did something clumsy. Okay, so the racket flew, hit Jerry. So what happened? Okay, I apologize profusely. And what happened to Uncle Jerry? He sustained minor injuries. Now here I have a choice. I chose minor injuries. I can also choose severe injury. Okay, so maybe the racket hit him so hard on the head that he had a concussion. Then you think, what happens next after the concussion, right? So if you choose severe injuries in your story, then it's more challenging to end the story, right? Because Uncle Jerry has got a concussion, maybe you have to involve the police, you have to involve the ambulances, then you have the medics, then you have to go to the hospital, etc., etc. How do you end a story? But if you feel, well, you have full confidence, you know how to spell all those words, and you want to go ahead with a severe injury, by all means, okay, do it, all right? But I don't recommend doing it because it's not necessary. You do not need to overcomplicate the story, all right? So when you choose minor injury, right, maybe just a bump on the head, okay? This Uncle Jerry, okay, look very handsome, all right? He has a bump on the head, okay? It's easier to resolve the situation, all right, so that my story is not overcomplicated, okay, and I don't need a lot of language skills, right, to end my composition. So here's what happened to the ending, all right. So I can choose an ending like, so we ate ice cream and we went home, right? Minor injury, you can do that. Severe injury, can you imagine, right? Your uncle is lying in hospital and what? You are eating ice cream? That's not going to work, right? Okay, so you cannot have this simple ending, right? So that is what I meant when I say you choose the injuries very carefully, all right? Okay, so now let's look at the actual writing itself, all right? Now for the introduction, I understand that a lot of schools like to start with a hook, right? So what is a hook? A hook is something that you use to grab the reader's attention, but written here that is optional. right? The most famous one is, of course, ringing the school bell rang, and I put overuse because this is taught in primary 3, right? And would you believe it, if you watch some of my previous videos, some of my upper secondary school students still using ring the school bell rang, but it's like you have learned to use a hook, but you have not really learned the technique, right? So the school bell ring is a sound, and the sound grabs attention. So I may want to replace the sound with another sound. So my story is about tennis, right? So maybe I start with ouch, exclamation mark, I exclaim, right? So maybe I'm hit by a tennis ball, right? So again, this is an example of being flexible, right? So you're not just memorizing ringing the school bell rang and copy and pasting all the time, right? So you're demonstrating that you're flexible and that you have the writing skills and that you make these intentional decisions in your writing, all right? It was a horrible day. I remember all the vivid details. This is another technique, flashback. So this, we aim to arouse the curiosity of the reader because, now the reader thinks, right, horrible day, what is going to happen? I remember all the vivid details. It's a flashback because I'm curious now. Okay, so can you share more? So they will read further, all right? Or I can ask a question. What would be a good sport to learn? I ask myself, right? So again, hopefully you arouse the interest of the reader by asking the question. Okay, so these are all good story starters, but like I said, they are non-essential, right? So students sometimes think that give too much credit, right, to the attention grabbers, right, to the hook, right, and they think that, oh, I have used the attention grabber, so I should do very well. That's not true, because this is not very essential. So what is essential, right? So things like establishing a setting, where and when, which we have done in our example, right? So look at the writing. So one fine, cheerful morning. So already the very first sentence, you leave a good impression by using, adjectives. I know cheerful may not be the best adjective, but up to you, right? You can go and pick your own adjectives. I don't want my students to write all the same words all the time, right? Everybody write cheerful, okay? No, you choose your own words. So I was having a conversation with my best friend Tom during recess. We felt bored and wanted to find something interesting to do. So how about trying out a new sport? Tom suggested. So in a good way, I feel, right? If you ask a question, you're arousing the interest. At the same time, you have the time, when, right? During recess, that's also when. Okay, so I think what's left is I need to establish fail to mention, right? Maybe I was having the conversation, okay, at a tennis court or near a tennis court or in school, right? But the fact that it's during recess already suggests that I am in school, okay? So my introduction is just 36 words, less than 50 words, all right? Ideally, maybe you can work it up to 50 words, but I'm talking about the essential ingredients of the introduction. At the bare minimum, you must have these ingredients, right? So word count at this stage, introduction, is not very important. We want to look at the overall word count later, okay? So at this stage, I will quickly turn on the timer, okay, 10 minutes. And then you can start writing the introduction, right? Okay, so time's up. You probably don't need the full 10 minutes to write just a paragraph of introduction. So maybe you could have used the time to do some planning as well. So very quickly, let's move on to the next slide, right? So paragraph 2, we want to start introducing our main characters, right? So here's what I have. Tom was known as the athlete in our class. He was handsome and muscular. He was also immensely popular and was nominated as our sports leader. I, on the other hand, was slow and clumsy. I was also small and short compared to Tom. Through my thick glasses, I looked at Tom sheepishly and asked, "Which sport do you have in mind?" Tom thought for a moment and replied, "Let's learn how to play tennis. My uncle is a tennis coach. I can ask him to teach us." Before I had a chance to reply, Tom added, "Meet me at the tennis court near my house this Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Just then, the school bell rang and we headed back to class. So second paragraph is 120 words. So with that said, you can start writing the second paragraph, and I will start the countdown timer, which is 10 minutes, right? So this is the second paragraph where you want to develop the story. You don't want to wait. There's no third paragraph, right? Start at the second paragraph because for time management purposes, right? You don't want to run out of time. Okay, so the timer is up. So let's switch it off and look at the next slide. Okay, so paragraph 3, like I said, we are going to write the climax itself. So that Saturday, I met Tom at the tennis court. Tom's uncle was just like Tom. He was also tall and muscular. He introduced himself as Uncle Jerry. Uncle Jerry started the coaching session by demonstrating how to perform the basic strokes, the forehand and the backhand. It looked easy enough. After the demonstration, Tom and I started to practice. Tom was a natural. He picked up the strokes quickly. However, when it was my turn, things took a turn for the worse. When I tried to hit the ball, the tennis racket flew from my hand and hit Uncle Jerry's head. Okay, so that's what happened. I quickly sprinted to him and apologized profusely. I am so sorry, I muttered. I'm such a clumsy ox. Uncle Jerry looked a little angry at first, but his anger soon subsided. He said, "It's fine, it's just a minor accident." He then walked to the far end of the court and stood there while we practiced. I think this should be an S, right? Tom couldn't help but burst out laughing. Alright, so in total, the climax, we have 165 words. So now it's your turn, right, to start writing the climax. Once again, 10 minutes starting now. Okay, so hopefully you're done, okay, with the paragraph. And then I think we are nearing the end of the demonstration already, because now we are done with the climax. All right, and all we are left with is the conclusion. So I don't think you need a timer for that, right? Because we just spent like 30 minutes writing the introduction, developing the story, introducing the characters, and the climax, right? And now we are reaching the conclusion. So after a couple of hours, it was time to go home. I thanked Uncle Jerry for taking the time to coach us and apologized again for giving him a bruise. Okay, he waved it off and even treated us to ice cream later. It was an unforgettable day. To this day, Tom still teases me about the day when I mistook Uncle Jerry's head as a tennis ball. Okay, 66 words. Excuse me. So like I said, the conclusion is not that important, but you do need a proper paragraph to conclude the story. Do not just give a one-liner, right, and just, or words, just give 2 words, the end. Okay, so give a proper conclusion, resolve it properly. All right. If you have managed your time, you should have the time to write a proper paragraph for the conclusion. All right. So here I put out start writing paragraph 4, but I don't think I want to put down the timer anymore. So you can pause this video and maybe just write the conclusion at your own time, or in your own time. All right. So here's a summary of the example that I've just given. Right. Introduction, you get 36 words. Introduce the characters, which is the second paragraph, 123 words. The climax, 165 words. And then conclusion, 66 words. And in total, we already have 390 words. All right, so even though we have a relatively short introduction, relatively short conclusion, the bulk of the words, right, within the content itself is good enough to bring us up to 390 words, which is good enough for the PSLE examination. All right, so emphasize on the meat. All right, emphasize on the characters, the climax, developing the story, and then just give a proper paragraph for the introduction and for the conclusion, and you are done. All right, so like I promised, here are some bonus tips. Always use past tense since it's a recount. All right, a lot of students use inconsistent tenses. They jump around past tense, present tense, past tense, present tense. So they're going to lose marks, okay, because of that. Do not introduce too many unnecessary characters. 2 to 3, that's like the sweet spot. Keep the plot relatively simple, right? Like I said, we chose a very basic, simple form of injuries rather than, you know, fractured bones, concussions, and so on and so forth. Okay. For advanced students, right, a twist is good to have, but again, this is optional. Right, so what is a twist? A twist is when you have something unexpected that happened within the story, right? For example, you expected not to have anybody celebrate your birthday for you, but it turned out that your friends organized a birthday party for you, so that's a twist, right? Or you never expected the tennis coach in our example to be maybe your own father, okay? So that's a twist. So I'm just throwing out some examples, right? So if you have better twist, you can keep the reader in suspense. Keep the twist, the reveal, remember, right? At the climax itself, right? Wait until the climax, then you reveal the twist. So that's a good spot, all right? Use the reflection when you don't have enough word count. So in our example, you are picking up a new sport. As with all sports, there are lessons that you can learn, right? For example, you learn about resilience, right? You learn about teamwork. All right, so these are good values or skills that you can write about in the conclusion, and especially useful when you find that you are short of words, okay, and you want to beef up the content. Then you write a reflection. All right, so once again, make sure you're happy with your plan before you start writing. Okay, so don't just start right away. And finally, remember to proofread your work. So what I advise my students to do is usually leave about 5 minutes of your time to proofread, checking for mistakes, spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, punctuation errors, etc., etc. Polish up your final output, right? Your final composition before you hand it in for the examiner to mark, all right? You want to do your best. And you'll be surprised that, you know, if you manage to catch a few mistakes here, a few mistakes there, you might save yourself from losing that 2-3 marks, okay? And every mark is important in an exam, all right? So with that said, okay, for those who are serious about, you know, improving their PSLE scores, learn about the language skills, you know where to find me, englishttution.org. All right, we've come to the end of today's lesson. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.